Okay, thank you for being patient with us as we came out of our closed session. Want to welcome everyone out here to the Highland City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, January 7th. The time is 7:07 p.m. We will start our council meeting with prayer by Kim Rodela, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by myself.
Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we're so very grateful for the opportunity to be here together, gathered together as a council and as Highland residents and staff. We're especially grateful for the opportunity to be able to make decisions that are in the best interest of our city. And we are especially grateful for the residents of the city as well. And say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. If I could ask Tim if you wouldn't mind turning the lights off, if you'll just hit the lights off back there. Turn the lights off. Yep. If everyone will please stand.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
thank you. Thank you. We will have now a time for public comment for anything that you'd like to come represent the city council. So at this time, if there's any individuals who would like to come up and address the council. Anyone? Okay. If there's no public comment, we will now move on to our presentations. I don't know if I don't see a youth council member here for a presentation for youth council.
Unfortunately, the individual who was supposed to come ended up in quarantine there, so we do not have a person here tonight.
Thus, you see why we're all separated. We've seen a little bit of I think, an uptick in COVID, so thank you for being understanding as we try to do our separations tonight. Our next presentation will be by our city attorney, Rob Patterson, on GRAMA and other training on keeping things open.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. State law requires that you all be trained at least annually on the Open Public Meetings Act. And this year we're also throwing in a little bit of training on GRAMA, the Government Records Access and Management Act. These are, in some ways, two sides of the same coin. And it's a coin that's mostly owned by Stephanie, our city recorder. She handles a lot of the work regarding notices, agendas, publication, and records. That's her title is recorder for that reason. So to begin with the Open Public Meetings Act, this is the law required or imposed by the state legislature that requires you as a public body to take your actions openly and conduct your deliberations openly. That is the policy statement behind the act. In terms of its technical requirements, what it means is if there's a meeting, and a meeting means there are three of you who can vote on something that are meeting together, then you need to provide notice, an agenda, and an opportunity for the public to come and watch you work. So a meeting, like I said, it includes workshops, electronic meetings if you meet over Zoom or in other ways, executive sessions, site visits, or traveling tours are all considered meetings. The requirements for notice can change between those. Sometimes we'll have a site tour, and all we will post is you have a quorum, and we're going out to this site, and that's more or less all we have to do. We still have to inform the public when three of you, not including the mayor, meet together. The mayor is a non-voting member for most things, doesn't count for quorum purposes. All of your meetings, essentially anything other than a social or chance gathering, are open to the public. Unless you close the meeting, like we did earlier today, for an executive session or a closed session, referred to either name, there are certain reasons allowed by law that you can close a meeting. Typically, it's sensitive materials, litigation, employee matters, security matters, negotiating settlements or property purchases, and similar things. And just kind of for your information, the difference between a public meeting and a public hearing, this is a public meeting. The public is here, able to watch. There's no specific right for them to participate. We, as the mayor just did, generally allow them to come and comment on whatever they wish for a limited time. A public hearing is required for certain matters. Usually it's say like a land use ordinance update or certain changes to a subdivision. We will require a public hearing. Public meetings only need to be noticed 24 hours in advance. We go a little bit beyond that. We try to do it the week before to give more advance notice. Has to have an agenda that includes what you're talking about, what you may act on, and any other relevant information. At a public hearing, you have to give the public a chance to comment, though it doesn't mean you necessarily have to accept it. Again, public meeting, you don't have to. You are either council, usually at the direction of the mayor, can allow the public to comment if you wish. And then there's the recording. Again, these are kind of more technical aspects that Stephanie usually handles, but these meetings are all recorded, which is why we are very careful. We will yell at people when they come up here to speak into the microphone because we need to be able to record what they are saying so we have it for our record. And we'll have minutes, as you will approve almost every time you meet, for the prior meeting that just is a summary of what you discussed. So that's the Open Public Meetings Act. It's a lot of technical rules, but in practice it's pretty straightforward. If three of you meet together to discuss essentially outside of a party or social gathering, you need to make sure you let us know so we can post an agenda, have a notice sent out. Electronic messages are one that become very tricky. This will relate to the next topic regarding GRAMA. State law specifically says that electronic messages, email, text, etc., do not constitute a meeting if they are outside of your public meeting. What this means in effect is the state law doesn't want you to sit there and have a discussion public but also have a side discussion on a phone or by email while the meeting is going on, so the public doesn't know what you are considering as part of the discussion. Outside a meeting, they don't consider that. I mean, that's not an issue to have a text thread or an email chain. That's not considered a meeting. In the meeting, state law says, avoid using your phones. Don't send messages. Also to avoid the appearance that there is some deliberation that is happening between you as council members that the public can't be witness to. Any questions on open public meetings?
So
Fantastic.
just one question. You mentioned on phones, and this comes out of a training that just came out on Saturday. You're recommending us being very careful coming in here. Like there might be someone in the audience texting this up here. Be careful to try to keep it as an open meeting versus a closed conversation.
Yes, that's the whole policy is it's not just to have the meeting, but have your deliberations be open as well. So maybe if someone has a comment they want to, maybe they can't share it or they're not. We often will read comments into the record. We've seen Rodman do that before where someone has submitted an email comment. We'll read that out so the public is aware of it. But avoid having conversation with the public or anything while the meeting is happening just to avoid that issue. So if you look your paper over, you get to GRAMA.
I've got one
Oh,
question.
yes.
So this was an issue that we've talked about before. When I was in the council one time in the past, 3 city council people showed up to the planning commission. And although the 3 sat different parts of there and never really communicated with each other, that caused a lot of kind of angst. So in a situation like that, are you just saying we shouldn't have 3 come to planning commission? It is a public meeting.
It's already noticed as a
Yeah.
public meeting, but it's noticed as a public meeting for the planning
Planning
commission,
commission.
not for the council. It's what would be considered a chance meeting because there was no prior discussion of, we're all going to go there. And
There's no coordination.
it can just be more of a policy matter of we don't want to have the appearance that we have a full quorum of council members sitting there who will offer input as a council, even though there's individuals or even as residents. So I recommend avoiding it where possible, but if it happens, it happens.
If 2 showed up, it's not a problem.
It's never a problem with 2 or anywhere.
Okay.
GRAMA is kind of the back end of this, and the council typically doesn't deal with this directly as much, except to the extent that you create and generate records. GRAMA is not a grandmother. It is the Government Records Access and Management Act. This is a state statute that balances the public's right to access basically public records that's balanced against the right of privacy that people have in interacting with the government. GRAMA is all focused on records, and a record is very broadly defined. It's documentary materials, physical or electronic, that are prepared, owned, received, or retained by the city, so anything the city receives, that are reproducible, meaning it can be transmitted in some way to someone else, and relate to the public business or retained by city representatives in their official capacity. So a record can include a voicemail, it includes email, it includes documents submitted, public hearing comments that are submitted in writing beforehand would all be records that people could request. Internal employee matters are considered records, though they may not be public. Anything that can be printed or emailed or somehow transmitted to someone else is considered a record, with certain exceptions. Personal notes, communications, personal drafts, personal calendars, that kind of personal information that's used for yourself is not considered a record subject to GRAMA, as long as it's not being used in your official capacity. If you write a note or you make a quick draft of something like, I need to go meet with someone at such and such a time, that's not a record, that's not something we worry about. The default rule is that all government records are public, and then essentially it is like the Open Public Meetings Act where all meetings are open unless you close them. Same with government records. They're all public unless they're non-public, and there are specific categories for non-public records. They have 3 categories: private records, which are usually personally sensitive information; controlled records, which usually deal with medical issues; and then a broad category of protected records, which is a long laundry list of different things legislature believes should not be revealed. This includes commercial records, real estate appraisals prior to reaching agreements, settlement negotiations, attorney-client privileged materials, internal deliberations or recommendations. A lot of the employee matters are all non-public records. The council will not be directly involved in the designation of a record as public or non-public. All of that goes to Stephanie. Stephanie is our records officer. She handles it very well. If you ever get a request for a record, I would recommend that you forward it to Stephanie so we can handle it appropriately, just so there's a right chain of command and we have the record of, this was asked for, we've responded to it appropriately. If we had to withhold a document, we've made a note of it. There's certain requirements that we have to follow if we are denying a records request. But essentially, we will provide records on request. Sometimes there's a fee that requires a significant amount of work, but work with Stephanie on that if there's ever a question on it. You will be seeing in the next, probably by the next council meeting, we're going to be updating the city's ordinances and policies regarding records and records retention. The one we have is just very outdated. It was adopted, I think, in '92 and hasn't been updated since then. So we're going to streamline it, bring it up to date with current state law. We're also going to adopt retention policies, which is just the policy of how long you can hold on to records, which are very exciting things. Certain records you have to hold on to forever, like ordinances that you adopt. Other records are transitory. They can be deleted or removed as soon as the matter is finished, or they're held for a certain number of years, and then they can be safely removed. We'll be bringing this information to you all, but in large part, if you have a record, some document, you're not sure what to do with it, talk to Stephanie, we'll figure it out. So any questions on GRAMA?
Yeah, this is kind of a possible scenario. So, and this is hypothetical. So what if you had a city council member who has been communicating with some of the city staff, a lot of emails and that? I assume that's all public record, right?
By and large, yes.
Okay, by and large. And what if another member of the city council or the mayor or someone wants to look at those records? Do they have to get a GRAMA request? How does that work if you're an elected official? Are you able to look at these other records without a GRAMA, or are you required to do that? How does it work?
Yeah, that's not a particular GRAMA request. That's a power that the council would have and the mayor has to inspect documents and reports from city employees and such. In that case, I would say work with Nathan or whoever to request that information.
But we wouldn't have to do a GRAMA.
No, that would not be something you have to submit a GRAMA request for or pay a fee for as a council member or whoever is requesting it.
So that's part of the governing process so that
Correct.
we can have access to it.
Correct. Any other questions on GRAMA or Open Public Meetings Act? It's very exciting, but it is important for us to maintain the records so the public is kept informed as to the city's business. It is their business. No? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. As we look at our agenda, we have two consent items. The first consent item is a plat amendment, Dry Creek Highlands Phase A. And then we have a public defender service contract that also is. Would anyone like to pull either of the consent items and discuss them?
I had a couple of questions about 4B.
Okay, so I'd like to pull 4B.
Yeah.
Is there a motion on 4A?
I'll make a motion on 4A. I'd like to make a motion to approve consent item 4A.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, so Brittany, you second? Okay. Motion by Ken, seconded by Brittany. Are we doing electronic voting? We don't have it here in front of us.
Not on.
Is that everyone able to log in? Can you able to get in, Ken? Okay. That motion passes 5-0. Scott, you had questions on 4B.
And I should have asked this beforehand, but as I was kind of reading through this evening again, I just had a couple questions. So currently, the public defender, we pay it $100 per hour. Is that correct? And the proposal is that we go with this group that charges $175 through pre-trial, an additional $75 post-sentencing. The other bid was at $110, but in the end, it costs us 10% more, and the first one costs us just 4% more. Is it the $75 thing is the difference there? I didn't quite understand how charging 110 would save you money if the other group's charging 175.
Because at 175 for a case, that case may be 2 hours. So if you go 2 hours, that's
Oh, so it's for the whole case?
Yes.
Okay, that answers my question. I wasn't sure when I read this what that meant. Okay.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move that the Highland City Council approve consent item 4B in the action that hires the firm to be the public defender. And I don't have their name out for me, but, Stevenson Gailey.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is by Scott Smith, second by Kim Rodela. We ready to vote? That's also a 5-0 vote. Our next item is a resolution for asphalt tilings in the Highland Glen Park. Who's taking that?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is a resolution to address some concerns. Sorry, Kearns. Don't live in Kearns. Anyways, a resolution to address some issues related to and adopt a policy plan and program to address removal of asphalt tailings that we have in Highland Glen Park. What the resolution does, says is the council will use reasonable efforts and good faith efforts to remove the tailings within a year. And if due to any unanticipated circumstances, if that cannot be done, that we would communicate with the residents by October 1st. We don't anticipate that that cannot be done. We just, after meeting with them, we felt, they asked for that, and we felt that that was a good thing to add. And then add, contingent upon available funds, add up to $20,000 for some improvements to that area, revegetation or whatever the case may be, that we can do for $20,000. And that's the simple outline of the resolution for you. We have to answer any questions that you have.
I have a question. So you've had a discussion with the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
The neighbors, and they think this is a good resolution.
Well, obviously, I think they would prefer something more concrete, but I think this is the, no pun intended, sorry. But I think this is a good place to start. You know, their concern is, I saw some letters back from 2002 and so forth where, hey, we're going to stop using them and using the property for certain things, and obviously that hasn't happened. So they wanted some kind of commitment, and working with Rob, we felt this was the best thing that we could do for the city.
So you talk about another $20,000 for revegetation. Isn't there going to be some effort to kind of decide what we want to do with that into the park? I mean, it would seem like there's some other options.
There is, and it hasn't been decided what to do with $20,000. It's just to improve that area.
So it'll be in the budget to do that.
Yes, but the
Okay.
council would have to decide to give direction to staff of what they want done.
And in this agreement, is there some agreement about fencing? I understood there was something
No.
about fencing that was going to happen.
Originally, we explored the option of replacing an existing chain link fence
Yes.
with something opaque, and they preferred to keep what was there.
Really? That's interesting.
They're like the open field. I've been working with these neighbors, and I'll be honest, those asphalt tailings should have never been there. They've been very patient, how many years they've been dealing with this. And I feel like as a city, this is a good step in the right direction, but I really want to implore our staff that we hold it as a concrete option of getting these tailings out as soon as possible and make sure we make that deadline. I mean, they've been promised time after time from previous councils and previous mayors that it would be removed and then a council will turn over and it will have been forgotten. So this is just a way to put it in writing that we are aware of the situation and we're going to remove it despite the turnover of the council and mayors, that this is now in writing.
We've actually made some pretty good progress
Yeah.
on those piles, so.
So you've
we're
already
feeling pretty
taken,
confident.
Have we started removing some of the asphalt?
Oh, yeah.
tailings down
We've
there?
made quite a bit of
So, I mean,
progress.
it is starting to already, and I think the main thing is, as we come to this new year, not stockpile anything else down there. Andy, if we have asphalt tailings in the future coming off our projects, where's it going? Okay. Andy in the corner.
Andy in the corner, come up to the front. So where we'll be taking it is to the Victor's property, which is kind of very close to the Kilgore pit. That's the property that we own in front of the Kilgore pit. And so that's really the only other place we have to take it is just our property there.
So I'm just going to ask, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. We were up there this last week at the Kilgore pit, or the gravel pit up there.
Yeah.
I noticed there's other storage already up there of other gravel or other type of, dirt material. Will that be coming off that property so we can store it up there? Or will they be in the same, who owns the stuff that's stored up there right now?
Some of it is project, interim fill out projects the contractors still have to take off, and some of it's ours.
Okay.
It's kind of a mix. But yeah, that property up there, at least for the foreseeable future, will continue to have, interim storage on there.
But this is where we'll be taking, if we have new asphalt.
If we have it, that's where we're going to take it, because that's basically the only place we have to take it, really there, is out there.
and there's how many acres there? 10?
Well, I can't.
I think there was
That's a
10.
great question, but I can't answer that.
I thought it was 10 when we looked last week.
Could
Highland City
be.
owns 10 acres.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have kind of the little triangle area that's out front. I guess triangles, the driveway kind of frames it.
Yes.
And we have kind of a flagpole, if you will, that goes up into the pit. So I think that totally is 10 with the flagpole. But I thought you were asking about how much was in the visible part that you could see.
No.
The visible is about 4.6.
Yeah.
So you
Then
do have
going up-
room to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
room. I mean, it fills up quicker than you think when you get a few contractors working in town, but there is room, and that's the place that we have to take it.
Total's about 10.
And other than that, I don't have. Yeah, really, that's the area we're working with, is what's highlighted on the screen.
So it's right in the front.
Yeah, it's right in the front, because the other area is kind of quasi-incorporated into the pit. I mean, it's flattened and things, but the pit operations kind of go on across it, if you will. So we own that next piece that's highlighted, and there's one more piece to the north of there that we own, yeah. We have those three pieces. But in practical sense, the only one that we really have to use on a day-to-day basis is the southerly one. That's, that one.
Thank you. So that's where the tailings will be going from here on.
That's where our materials are.
Any other discussion on this?
I'd like to make a motion if that's okay.
Okay.
Oh, my motion just went away. I move that the City Council approve the resolution adopting a policy and plan for the removal of asphalt tailings in Highland Glen Park.
I'll second it.
Motion by Kim, seconded by Scott. Ready for a vote? That is a 5-0 vote. Our next item on the agenda is designation of the value of orphan parcels for 2022. I believe that's my item. So this has come before the council last year, for the last several years. The reason for the designation, I believe a lot of us are aware, but maybe for the public, the city, an orphan parcel is traditionally a parcel that is sitting behind someone's home. So it's a parcel that is really only value is related to those neighbors that are close by it. It does not have probably it's not a buildable lot. And so as we looked at it, because of the uniqueness of orphan parcels, it's hard to come up with a value. So back in, I believe it was 2018, the city obtained an appraisal and asked the person that did the appraisal what they've done in the past on orphan parcels, that they have done a lot with different, like with Utah Power and Light, where they'd go do some acquisitions. They did some things with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints when they would go and do some disposition of property. The value that they came back with that appraisal was they recommended it to be 25% value of the parcel. Now with that, because these are smaller parcels being in a home, it's hard also to justify going get an appraisal for every parcel. So the city over the last probably several years has sold orphan parcels. I happen to be the person that called down to Utah County Tax Division with the property tax and asked kind of a little bit how they did that. We looked at their history. There was a lot of property up in the Beacon Hills that had been sold in the past. We looked to see what they had done with those parcels that we had sold, what type of value they came to. And in talking with them, that they recognized also that it was the 25% of the parcel value, and they were using it off of the county parcels. So the value for 2022 is what's being proposed is going to be based on the property value, the property tax assessed value of 8 parcels in Highland. What we did is we had 8 parcels that we went, and that's in the packet of it, and was interested in the parcels. They're very consistent, so we keep consistent. They are made up of several different parcels. There'll be some that are in open space that are 0.39 acres. We also went and found there are 3 properties in there that are over 1 acre. So we went and found different parcels, different size to try to make it more fair. So we have some 0.12 parcels in there from Viewpoint. We have the 1 acres are from on an address of 111350 North area. We went to Eagle View and pulled parcels from there, which were half acres and full acres. And we went to Avery Lane, which is the Canterbury area, and pulled 3 parcels from there. So we went and took it amongst the whole area of Highland. And then what we did is we went in and looked at, so everyone, the price that we're putting down here is what everyone bid for the property tax value for this last year, which was set January 1st of 2021. So this is not necessarily as the value as of right today. It was actually January 1st of 2021. We've taken 25% of the Utah County parcel of these properties that we have earmarked. And so if anyone did not feel like their property tax value was correct, they have a mechanism to go and dispute that, to get the value down on those. And so we felt like that was a fair basis in how we came up. This year, the value would be $3.14 per square foot for the city council if they decide to sell any orphan parcels. Is there any questions that anyone might have on that? Or?
I have just a point of clarification. So this will not identify any properties that may or may not be orphan, and it will not obligate the city to sell any piece of property. It just sets the value. Is that correct?
Correct. This is if we decide as a council to sell a parcel. It's not. We're not trying to negotiate with each of the residents. It allows us. This is the price that we're setting for 2022 is $3.14. It's not obligating to sell. That's, I think, was your question. Or we're not. The property on the list is not the properties for sale. It's just for them to be determined as a value. If we keep it consistent, we'll keep consistent in value.
That's the price. So I've got a couple questions, and I'm sure there's a lot of other questions, but I think the formulation is great, and I support it. It seems like we came up with the $2.74 for 2021 properties.
Correct.
But we didn't really settle on that till mid-year, did we?
We didn't open it up till June, I think it was.
Right. And so I guess the question I have is we approved a number of properties to sell at $2.74, but we had other applicants that we haven't got to their property yet, or we postponed it. Are they, if they're approved, they'll have to come under the $3.14, And when they applied, were they aware that they might have to pay more? I don't know if there's many out there. Kelly probably can tell us the best. Are there some out there that have applied but they won't go forth till this next year, or am I mistaken?
Well, there's obviously the ones that have been deferred that
Right.
applied from, well, there's Windsor Meadows, there's the Twin Bridges ones. To my understanding, I thought that those that applied in 2021 would get that price, but
So that's your understanding. If they applied in 2021, if we eventually approve it, that's the price they will pay. They won't have to pay the higher price?
that was my
that's-
understanding.
Yeah, that's what we talked about. I do remember that conversation. The year that they apply is the year that they value, even if we don't approve it until the next year.
Okay.
But so the question I'd have, how long will that be, is that just allow for 1 year to come in and be able to get something decided on?
So the year that they apply is a year, so they applied in 2021 at that value. And I mean, we're the ones who are taking a long time to decide on it, and so they will still be held to the value in which they applied for.
And what properties we understand, the only one I'm aware of that's still out there is the Twin Bridges property where we didn't know the boundaries. Is there other properties that we understand that had not been decided on or either given a yes or no from 2021?
I misspoke when I said Windsor Meadows, that one y'all ended up denying when you reviewed the deferred property, so it would only be the Twin Bridges ones that are outstanding.
So what we're.
Are you agreeable with the 20?
Yeah, so what everyone's saying is the Twin Bridges properties, because we mentioned we didn't know where the lines were at, they had to come back, is the understanding is they would be able to purchase at the 2021
The
price, which is the
$2.74.
$2.74, but they need to get it resolved this year. If it's not resolved this year, it would not carry over. Is that what the understanding is?
Yeah. Is that the same thing for people who applied and were approved but have not yet purchased?
Yes, because I think if they all, so Kelly, that's a good question. So if someone's been approved, is everyone approved, enter into a purchase contract, or do we have any purchase contracts that have not moved forward? Like, we approved, yes, but they haven't moved forward with purchase.
Yes, we have a lot of them, especially when you think of the Avery Ave ones that are along Murdoch Canal property. Those are ones that didn't formally submit requests, but were approved in the resolution that y'all passed. And so I guess that's just something that y'all are gonna have to decide, is whether they get to stick with the 274 or after a certain date, it adjusts.
I thought we gave them a year.
A year to purchase.
Council decision.
I thought it was a year after we decided, and if they didn't do it, then things changed.
So the recommendation is 1 year upon the decision time?
I thought that was the discussion.
That seems to me what's fair. I don't think we should do it indefinitely. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 4 council members. What we just stated, and I'm just going to restate, if we approved it in October, they have 1 year until October. If we approved it in November, they have 1 year until November. It's 1 year from the approval time to close on the property. Is that clear to staff?
Yes,
Okay.
it is, thank you.
Is it clear also that the only property that would be outstanding to be able to handle for 2021 is those properties that were up in Twin Bridges? We were trying to get definition on the boundaries up there. So is that the understanding for the council? That's the only property outstanding for 2021.
So anything new would be at 314.
Anything new, if this passes
For this
tonight,
year.
is the 314.
Mayor, can I ask one clarification? Does the approval last beyond the year, or is it just the price that expires in the year?
That's council. I would assume the approval and the price. I mean, I assume if we're agreeing to the price, we would agree for the approval to get to 1 year too. Is that the right assumption?
That would make sense to me.
Me too.
I think as long as the people that are involved understand that, because they may think that it's approved, so it goes indefinite. I think we need to be sure.
But after
that they
1 year, if
understand.
they've not moved forward, that approval, it would not be good anymore. They need to act within 1 year. Right, that was your question, right? Is that the council agreeable to that?
Yes.
I do have a quick clarification question, just because when you think of the properties that are on that horseshoe trail, up like Apollo Way, those had that resolution that was approved a couple of years ago, and it was seen as these are approved for sale until we passed like the designated value policy that will establish the cost of that property. But so I guess what I understood is once you pass that resolution with those designated properties, that those were approved. You would still need to sign those purchase contracts, so that's your other level of approval.
Yeah.
This would just be approval for them to, like, for y'all to have the ability to dispose of is what that resolution is doing, and so you would still have that option to enter into the purchase contract. So technically, they would still be approved.
So we're talking about the
Just not
horseshoe,
entered.
it's the trail, but they have to do the moving of the irrigation area, correct?
Yes.
And they have not moved forward with the sale. So what your question is,
There are 4 that have, but that one resolution is still outstanding where if they all came forward, they all could buy because it's still the
Yeah.
all or nothing type deal except for those 4 or the 5 on the south.
but okay, so this, she's bringing up a very good point. We just stated that if they didn't move forward within 1 year, they had to come back and get it reapproved. She's bringing up this, is it horseshoe bend or?
Horseshoe trail. is what
Horseshoe
we refer to it
trail.
as.
It's up here on the map. Are they approved or do they still need to come back in and, because it's past 1 year, they've not moved forward on this 1 year, purchase. There's been 4 of them that have, but the rest have not.
Well, where I have a little trouble is we've discussed the 1 year. I know we've discussed that the price would stay the same. I don't remember any discussion putting a kind of a sunset on our approval.
Okay? That's why the question.
I mean, I think we'd have to discuss that and maybe pass something, a resolution, wouldn't we?
Do they still need to come in for a purchase agreement? I mean, is that still going to have to come back to the council?
The purchase agreement that we have approved is that template for the 2021 purchases. And so to my understanding with new ones, we would have to bring a new draft of a purchase contract to y'all, so.
Do we want to wait for them to bring that back to discuss it at that time, or do we want to try to decide tonight? I don't know if it's a decision we can make. It's not on the agenda. It's just, this is
Not on the
about the
agenda.
price.
The price part, I think there was a consensus on. I think people need to understand that if we're talking about it sunsets at 1 year, they need to understand that.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree, Scott.
yeah, because I don't think there was a discussion of that.
So let's do the price now and then
Yes,
put it on the agenda for the
maybe
approval
discuss
timeline.
if we want to sunset the approval. Okay.
Just as a
Does
discussion.
staff
item.
understand that if we're going to send, we're only discussing tonight about the price, we need to discuss about sunsetting of purchases if they haven't moved forward. With that, is there any other discussion items on the value of the 2022 price at $314? If not, I would like to open the public, if there's any public comment on, since we're dealing with the price, is there any public that would like to make comment on that? Seeing none, we will then move forward. Is there a motion?
I'd make that motion. I move the city council adopt the resolution establishing the value for orphan space parcels. Do we need to say what that price is?
Yes.
At $3.14 a square foot.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, it was Cameron, who seconded it?
I'll second.
Sarah seconded. Is that your first time seconding, or?
It is.
There we go. So it is motion by Brittany, and then it is second by Sarah. Any other discussion? If none, then we're ready for vote. That passes 5-0. Okay. The next item on our agenda is a resolution designating it's an action item, the broadleaf hollow channel reconstruction. And that's you, Andy?
That is the, oh, whoops, well, okay, we'll jump to the map already. I do it. Press, there we go. So what we're talking about tonight is just a little background. On September 21st, we brought forward to the council Mr. Myers, Mr. and Mrs. Myers' lot as kind of the, I guess, first discussion item. And we talked to council about the way that we're going to do the new easements on the broadleaf channel. And so let me just go to the broadleaf channel. There we go. So it's just as a backup item for everyone, or kind of just where we are. So broadleaf channel exists down the rear of 9 properties. It's approximately 6,500 west. It's between 11,800 north and Bull River Road. It's the dark line on the map. so on September 21st, the council approved the new easement format, which for basically reconstructing the channel and moving the channel in the back of these yards, and said, okay, go get the rest of everything ready, go get a construction bid, and prepare, the format for vacating the old easements. So the next two items we're going to talk about, one is the construction bid, the next one is vacating the old easements. So we put the channel out to bid. I can't hardly see anything there. I'm hoping you all can see that. Just with the projector, I apologize, I can't see much. And so what I wanted to point out with this slide is...
Andy, you can probably look on the TV in front of you.
Yeah, I apologize.
Just move the mic around to you if you need to.
I just want to make sure they were seeing what I thought they were seeing. What we are proposing to do is we will build the channel with a rock liner. It'll be 16 feet wide. In the general sense, we're trying to slide it as far east towards the trail as possible, so that it encumbers as little as possible of the people's lots. Now there's a slope that comes off from the trail, and depending on that slope, depends on how close we can actually slide that channel to the rear of the people's lots or to the east. So we put out those plans to bid. Again, I just want to make sure you're seeing what and I apologize to the audience because I can't see any more than you can, but in general it shows that channel, the new channel, being shifted over towards the trail on the plan. So what had been budgeted for this project was $220,000. That was based on some early bids that were, 18 months, 2 years ago, something like that. But we also saved in this year $109,000 that we had for storm drain work, generally knowing that the economy had kind of done what it had done and things got a little more expensive. But we actually felt really good about the construction bids where they came in. And so we're proposing to you a total construction cost of about $278,000, which, all things considered, with the inflation that we've had and the rising construction costs, we feel very good about. And what we do recommend is, in any proposed motion, that this is the proposed motion that's in the staff report, and notes that release or issuance of the contract is subject to receipt of the new easements, because we really can't move forward with it until we get the actual easements. We do have one of the property owners, because they had to go out of town, has already signed it for us, and we've been in communication with one of the others, so we have every expectation that they would sign the easement. But it's been a little bit difficult because something had to move forward first, right? And so, we have to figure out who signs the easements, when we vacate it, and when we bid it. They all kind of had to move at the same time. So there's no reason to believe that things aren't going to move forward, but we do need to make our motions tonight, both this one and the next one that we consider subject to receipt of the new easements, so that we don't find ourselves without any easements, if you will. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the construction or construction bid. If you have.
I just wanted, did you go?
Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt.
You're good.
Okay. So could you just kind of briefly list the benefits to the city of doing this, and then the benefits for the residents? Because obviously you've said we're going to move this farther east so that they have the ability to use more of their property. But what are the benefits to the city and the sewer drainage or the storm drainage system?
Sure. I think there's two benefits to the city that come to mind, but maybe others that others can point out. And certainly welcome if others see some other benefits. But the main benefit is we're going to place the channel again within an easement, right? Because the channel as it sits today has meandered outside of the easement, and so we have a channel that's not in an easement on the people's property. The second benefit to the city is we're going to armor it this time so that it shouldn't move on us, right? And so we're going to put it in an easement where we have legal permission for it to be, and then we're going to armor it and build it stronger so that it stays there. That, you know, and it is going to be designed for the flow that we feel that we could see there as a maximum flow. And so we'll have it big enough and strong enough, and it'll be in the right place. That's the benefit to the city. To the residents, the benefit would be, as we look at the next item, we're jumping ahead a little bit on the other two items, we are proposing that as part of that, the city vacate the old easement, and that we also vacate the currently on the plat, there is a no-build line, if you will, that is the western line of the old easement. And so we are proposing to vacate the old easement and remove that no-build line, which means that some of these properties, you know, might pick up another 20 feet or so. It varies for every property because the slope is different on each one, the situation is different, the topography is different for each lot. But some of them are going to pick up some additional, well, I think all of them pick up additional usable areas. Some of them, just because of their particular topography, gain a little more than others, but we're doing all we can. So the benefit to the residents is, as well, if you look at it, the ditch will be armored, so it'll be better able to handle the flow and stay in place and not do damage to their parcel. Number two, they'll get a little more usable area in their lots.
So they could actually construct some sort of building or something within
Right,
10
they
feet
could-
of it?
they could-
I mean, if they
I know
got
that-
20 feet, they could put something at the bottom of their slope.
Right, I know that there is some interest by some in putting a little shed down there. Others are going to expand maybe some of the uses of their backyard. So they're going to pick up a little bit of extra.
Pavilions, things like that.
Right. Other things that they can do, because currently there's no construction within that easement going east.
So how many days of the year? Is there just water running in this when there's a storm? Or is there water running quite often in drainage?
Pretty well. You've got drainage of some sort or another in it full time, all year round.
That's why the cattails and everything else
you've
flood
got,
in there.
because upstream of this it gathers all the storm drains, so even through the summer you've got water in it because you've got people's overspray where it runs down their sprinklers, there's landscape irrigation that runs down the curb, goes the storm drains, takes it to this channel. So pretty well have some type of base flow most days of the year.
And from our discussion earlier today, it sounds like you spoke with all the residents to some degree, or most of them.
Yeah, prior to our bringing the item on September 21st, I went and met with everyone in their homes, at least everyone that I could. On the very south, the southern home lot, 302, has been purchased by the Packers, and they live out of town, and so I just spoke on the phone with them. The others that needed to get new easements, which would be lots 303 through 309, I met with each one of them, talked through what we were going to do, and then subsequent to that and getting the bid and in preparation for this meeting, I sent out notices, emails to each of the residents saying, hey, we're going to be talking about this tonight, and shortly thereafter, we're going to ask that you sign the easements so we can move forward. And so I'm having various discussions. The one property owner that I'll point out that's not going to give a new easement is the colleges in lot 310, but they are going to work with us, and I have met with them. They are here tonight, and they're going to allow us onto the property to put the new channel, the new lined armored channel, into the old easement, and so they are working with us as well on that. But so we've had an active dialogue going with all the residents on the corridor.
So just one last question.
Sure.
Okay, and I'm sorry to kind of
You can ask
too
all
many
the questions you want.
Well, it's not fair to some of the other council that you want to. But is there going to be any sort of barrier between the trail and this waterway? I mean, is there any concern about safety if kids are on that trail and wander down where there's water? I mean, is it shallow enough that you don't have to worry about drowning in the water or anything?
Well,
And I'm just wondering about liability things.
Sure. And that item came up a little in the September 21st meeting. Tanya College asked that the council considering allowing a fence. Right now on the plat for these lots, fences are restricted from that western easement line to the west.
Right.
And so as we look at the next item, the staff recommendation is that the council allow a fence to be placed between the trail and the channel. We're recommending that the closest to be to the trail is kind of the edge of the trail easement because it's an easy point to define, but that we allow either a fully open or partially open fence that would meet our fence ordinance.
Between the trail.
Between the trail and the channel.
And the channel,
So that
okay.
if the property owners want to put up that protection, I guess you'd say, for the kids or for the passerbys, that they have the ability to do that. We're suggesting that would be the property owner's expense to put in that fence, and then also that if they so choose to put in a side fence, if you will, that crosses the channel, that they need to put in a pipe so that that fence doesn't fall down into the channel and block the channel. And, that if they do put in that pipe, that they're responsible for, whatever damage could ensue, because, if anything came down and blocked up against the pipe and say the water caused damage to the fence, et cetera, they accept that ultimate responsibility for that. But we are recommending that they be allowed to fence that.
So to kind of follow up on a question, because that came up, can they pipe their entire property or only the area where the fence is at?
Well, what, and some of this was developed, before I got here, some of this concept, and so some of those discussions, there may be others of the staff that can pitch in as to some of that. Right now, what's contemplated is that if they wanted to have a little open bridge of sorts, that property owners could pay for a 10-foot section of pipe to be put in by our contractor. I think at a later time, if they wanted to figure out their own contractor and could do it without doing damage to anything, they could have their own contractor put it in. But right now, it's just contemplated that they could have kind of a short crossing and not really pipe the whole thing.
So let's assume their backyard's 130 feet. I'm just,
Right.
you're
Sure.
stating that that maybe coming up to 10 feet, but not the whole 130 feet. Is that my understanding?
That's what's contemplated right now, is just they could put in a crossing. Now, certainly that's, I would say up for discussion in a future day. I don't think anything that we're doing tonight is saying absolutely not to a future pipe, but it's not in the current program, say it that way.
I guess I'm kind of just trying to understand this a little better. Why wouldn't the residents want to put some sort of fence or barrier on the west side of the channel? I mean, because they've got more room there. Could they do that and just ignore the easement of the city? Because I guess what I'm concerned about is it would seem to me like you would want some sort of barrier between the trail and the channel, but I'm not sure that all the residents are going to want to put up their own fence there. Does that make sense? I'm just kind of curious. It seems like it'd be pretty checkerboard.
I think so.
Yeah.
So let me attempt to answer what I think you're asking. So,
Right.
So with the actions that we're taking on, or we're proposing to take, on vacating the easements, et cetera, going to the new easements,
Right.
there would be nothing that would stop the residents from putting up a fence on the west side of the channel or their
Right.
home side of the channel. They could put that right up to the edge of the new easement. And they could do it however they wanted to in conformance with the city ordinance, right?
Right.
The request that was made is to also allow them to put up something on the east side of the channel, so to kind of keep the kids or passerbys out of the channel to reduce any liability exposure to the residents. So I guess in answer to your question, my answer would be they could really do both if they wanted.
Sure.
Like say they wanted to have a fence on the west side that kind of framed their yard or the usable part of the yard, and then a fence on the east side so that they kept passerbys out. They could do both with this proposal.
So that just opens another question. Maybe this is a question for our attorney. But if the city owns this strong an easement now, so we can put the channel in, and I agree with it, do the property owners still have all the liability if someone comes off the trail and gets into trouble in that channel.
Yeah, I'm gonna punt that one to.
Yeah, so it just seems like I just don't understand where the liability will rest, or if it's both, or none, or.
Because the risk would come from the presence of the drainage channel and the trail, those are not features that the property owner owns, nor has any responsibility to maintain. So the risk falls on the city. Risks, we've discussed this a few times, maybe even a council ago, I can't remember now. Regarding ditches or canals, liabilities, there's always a risk, especially if we're not maintaining it properly. The risks are minimized under state law because there's a recognition that we need channels and drainage and ditches to exist just to channel water throughout our cities. But of course, there is a risk, but that would fall on the city for ensuring that we maintain it properly.
So would it be beneficial to I'm probably asking some questions I might not or shouldn't ask, but wouldn't it be beneficial to the city to put some sort of barrier the full length there? I mean, if the liability falls on the city? I mean, because you're kind of depending on the goodwill of the people that live there. I guess if I lived there, I went down and looked at this with Mr. Spencer and Councilwoman Bills today, but it just seems like if I lived there, I'd probably put the fence on the west side of the channel, because I can't do too much with the channel and stuff. But
Right.
it seems like there's a liability off that trail on the channel for me in my head. And it seems like this, I don't know.
There is. It's the same liability the city has on any number of trails throughout the city. We have trails
Right.
that are on slopes. We have trails along ditches and irrigation lines everywhere throughout the city. We don't fence off all of them because it's just not practical in some ways. Obviously, yes, it's better if we could fence off every danger that we could. The risk is, it's present. It's up to how much the council wants to spend on putting improvements on trails and such. That's always what it comes down to.
I mean, I think what you're bringing up, Rob, is our city center trail is one of the heavier used trails, and it has the irrigation ditch right the side of it. Some will get out, and it's in the backyards of some things. I think that's what I appreciate the concern, but like you mentioned, we have several of our trails, that's where they went in, is by some of the irrigation ditches.
Right.
Often where we can get a right of access because they don't mind that we put a trail alongside an access easement for a ditch.
I guess the question I just have is if we have an option maybe to do something, even if it's just I don't know, it wouldn't have to be a stone wall or vinyl fence or chain link even. It could be one of the little wood things that are kind of decorative. I don't know. I just wonder if we ought to think about it. I'm answered all my questions.
Any other questions for Andy?
I have a couple questions. The first two are questions that I got from a resident. So first off, does the plan include restoration of the hillside above the pipe?
Above the pipe, like the north end of
Yeah.
the,
Where there's been it's kind of flooded out, so there's little waterfalls.
if you mean kind of like when the pipe comes off and then there's a big drop off between the pipe and the current channel. Is that,
yeah.
am I understanding that?
Yes.
Yeah, the intent is to fill up, for the new channel to fill up and come out and begin where the pipe daylights, meaning the channel, that hole won't exist anymore. We'll fill that hole up. So there won't be a little waterfall at the end of the pipe. Is that the question? Am I understanding the question?
No?
So, Brittany, are you asking as it comes across 118th, right, as it comes across and dumps there as it starts, where it's kind of made a little divot? Is that the area of concern?
So this is a question, this is from Tanya, and I didn't have time to respond to her email or ask you earlier. Her concern is that the plan is going to involve restoration of the hillside above the pipe where there are now huge holes from the repetitive spring waterfalls and street flooding. Does that make more sense?
That's coming right off 118th North, right there.
118th.
And it comes, and it goes down, it's made a great big kind of pool.
Yeah, kind of a pool there.
Are you
Yeah,
saying
we're
you're gonna build that
We're
up?
gonna fill that up, yeah, yeah. So, sorry, I wasn't trying to give you a hard time. I
No,
was
you're
trying to
good.
understand the question. Yeah, we're gonna fill up the pool or the big pit that has formed at the end of the pipe. We'll fill it up and put it back together so that there's no more holes, and so it just comes out of the pipe and goes straight into the channel.
And the dirt that you're rearranging is just the dirt that's already there.
Right, we're not planning to bring in new dirt, we're just planning to generate the dirt that we filled the old ditch by digging the new ditch. To bring in a bunch of additional dirt would be a lot more cost, and so the instruction that we gave to the contractor was bid this as a no import, just an on-site material shift, but no import.
Would tellings fit good down there and then put dirt on top? I know you think it's junk, but tellings would be kind of a stable, and you could put stuff on top of it.
You could put it on the bottom of the ditch, I guess. We could put it in the bottom of the ditch, some of the pulverizings, et cetera. We'd still have to pay the trucking money to get it up there, et cetera. The straight tailings, probably not, but we have, down in the pile area, we have some that's kind of mixed up with dirt, and then we have others that's just straight asphalt. We hadn't contemplated that, but you could put some of the stuff that's kind of mixed up with the dirt, as long as it was okay with the residents, that they'd have little chunks of asphalt back there and stuff, but that could go there. But yeah, our basic intent was to just transfer material on site. We're gonna come in, we're gonna clear the top 6 inches of where we're gonna move the material to. That will be trucked off site, just kind of the 4 to 6 inches that has the vegetation. That'll be trucked off site, and then we'll just dig the new channel, and what comes out of the hole from digging the new channel will go in the hole to fill the old channel.
Okay. My last question. So in the fiscal impact, I see that contingency of 10%. So isn't it correct that when we approve something like that, it can go over the bid by 10% without it coming back to council?
Yeah, that's the intent, and that's how we've been bringing them forward to council. It gives us the ability as staff to adapt to what we find and to make a decision right there. When the contractor brings us out and they've got a tractor sitting there waiting, and they say, what do you want me to do with this? That's what our standard practice is, to just give us 10% contingency to make decisions. And so if it went over that, it'd come back to the council.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So if we approved a 10% contingency, that doesn't mean then that you can go 10% over that 10%?
No. The intent is just to 10% is our cap. So what we're asking you to approve tonight is the basic bid was $228,000. There were 2 items that were left off the bid, left off the plans, and we've got pricing for those. One of those is some fabric liner that goes underneath the rock to help the channel not move. The other is some reseeding, so that once we're all done, we can come through and reseed and have the area go there, and then there's 10% for us to deal with the unforeseen items in construction. We hope to not need that, but there's always something that you can't foresee.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure you couldn't go 10% over the 10%.
Yeah, no, the intent is just to live within that 10%. Just that's our contingency money to just deal with the we need that anytime we go and dig somewhere, because you just never know completely what you're going to find.
Sorry, don't mean to startle you. Your point is very well taken, that as written, our purchasing policy would allow for a 10% adjustment on top of whatever you approve tonight, which if you include a 10% contingency, we used to not require or include into the cost that the council would approve that contingency amount. And so the purchasing policy was built to essentially have on the back end a contingency amount for staff to handle. And now we're putting it on the front end, but we haven't updated the policy to reflect that. So we're going to talk with Nathan, we should update our policy where that 10% adjustment is allowed only in cases where the council has not already approved a contingency, or where the council disallows it for whatever reason the council chooses. So we will fix that policy to reflect that concern and make it clear, as Andy says, we're only going to have a 10% on this one.
Yeah, that was not the intent, to try and double up the 10%. It's just trying to show the the total project cost, right? As we come into these, okay, as we go into this is what we anticipate our total project cost is going to be, is the 278.
Oh, I have one more question.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm just trying to visualize this, because after I walked down there today, I mean, it's actually a beautiful area. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
you got
corridor is beautiful.
Gorgeous
Yeah.
homes and things and backyards. I was kind of envious. But I guess, so what we're doing is we're going to move the channel farther east, which gives the residents more of their own property to do something with, because the easement moves over. And so I guess the question I have, you just were talking about, if they wanted to, they could bridge the channel and they can bring a fence up to within a perimeter by the trail if they so choose, if it's one that's partially open at the top and they have a gate in it. So are we going to have restrictions on what they can do with the slope between the trail and the channel? What if they wanted to landscape it, plant full of trees? Is there restrictions on that? Have we thought through that? I mean, are we going to leave it natural vegetation? It's quite,
Well,
I thought it's quite beautiful right now, but I just wondered what the staff is thinking.
You know, I hadn't contemplated in large measure that they would want to, you know, make it a manicured area, if you will, because the whole area is kind of native in character. As you know, there's still quite a bit of the scrub oak left there, and what we plan to reseed with is just a native seed. You know, we hadn't contemplated changing other provisions of the plat. What was, you know, originally intended on the plat is that everything from the storm drainage channel onto the east was kind of a conservation area. Now, in theory, that conservation was leaving the natural vegetation that was there. By doing this, we're kind of going to come on, and we're going to, a lot of that natural vegetation, grasses, et cetera, we're going to have to strip off, you know, and then we'll reseed it. So none of the action we're taking tonight necessarily changes the intent of that area. It's not a discussion that I've had with the residents. So I would say right now that those plat provisions that, you know.
But one of the
were
residents
associated with
right
that area
now
wouldn't
has a
change.
page fence that goes back up close to
Right.
the trail. But I guess what you're thinking is it'll stay kind of a conservation area with more native things. But at the same time, we're saying they can fence it. So if you fence it, why would you fence a conservation? I don't know. I don't live there, so I don't know what everybody's thinking. But.
Admittedly, that's actually not, you brought up a point that no one has discussed with me as far as the desire to make it more of a manicured area.
Right, or plant trees in it and things.
Yeah, in a general sense, you know, and you've got, you know, a number of the residents here, you know, they may have additional thoughts, but in a general sense, my discussion with everyone is that, you know, kind of, I hate to say status quo, but, you know, what, you know, from the channel to the eastward, kind of, you know, we'd revegetate it with just a native seed and kind of stay as is.
That's the assumption.
But that's been my assumption, but it's not admittedly something I've discussed with a number of people. You know, a lot of the discussions I've had with people on vegetation down in the channel have been over how collectively can we control the Phragmites and some of the other invasive weeds that have moved in there. That's been definitely a concern of a number of the residents. And that's going to be a long-term objective. And it's going to take the homeowners helping, it's going to take the city helping, because anytime we've got a corridor with water in it, that with frequency we have, those weeds are just going to come in, and we're just going to have to, you know, work hard to keep them out collectively. But it's something the city can't do on our own. That would be just too much for us to.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if there was a consensus in the group of the people that live there a little bit.
And I
What
don't
they
know
want
that I
to
can
do with
report
that
their
slope.
feelings on that, because it's just
Yeah.
something we didn't talk about. I think the presumption, at least on my side, is that it would stay native.
Native.
I think it's important, because right now it's a conservation easement area, right? So
Conservation
I think,
area.
I think what Scott's bringing up, there's two questions I have probably for this. One, if we put a fence up or they put a fence, are we needing access down to this channel to keep it in or to do any work on it? And so do we have that easement to be able to do that, to be able to get down into that area?
Yeah, so to answer your question in twofold, number one, what we're proposing is the new easement goes clear to the back of the lot.
Okay.
You know, and so basically the easement goes from the back of the lot all the way to the far edge of the channel. So we would have the legal ability to do that. Number two, in a practical sense, if they put up a fence, we're suggesting that they would need to put up a gate, a 20-foot gate.
There have to be a gate on it.
Yeah, there have to be a gate on it so we could get through with equipment, et cetera. And what we're suggesting is, say, two neighbors want a fence, well, then you could put the gate on the common lot line. It wouldn't have to be, but, they could each share a little bit of the gate so we can get through the gate and maintain those couple hundred feet each way. But if just one neighbor has a fence, then the gate would have to be on their property entirely.
And I assume if they go put a fence on this east side, they have to come in and get a fence permit, so it's looked at. So we're knowing, have you told them the width of the gate, so they know, hey, we got to be able to get if it's 10 feet, is it 2 feet? I mean, what's the width of the gate?
Yeah, the property owner that's been most interested in the gate has been the colleges. I did meet with them, talked to them about a 20-foot gate. Again, 20-foot gate so that, we're probably going to pull in on an angle, because we're not going to be able to approach perpendicular. And so we need a little bit of room there. They seemed okay with that, 20-foot idea. We talked about maybe 16, but as we thought about it, just thought, well, let's just keep it standard, keep it 20, and then that way, if it's on a property line or something, it's just 10 on each one. But yeah, the idea, and what's suggested in the motion is that, because this is a little bit outside the norm, and so just the straight out fence ordinance probably is a little bit tough to just say, well, we'll just rely on a fence ordinance. So what's suggested in the motion is if the council is so inclined to allow the fence, then we would add the fencing verbiage to the proposed easement that they give us so that they're agreeing to it, they're acknowledging that, okay, I understand what the fence restrictions are, but then at least that's also a mechanism whereby we're acknowledging the fact that, yeah, you can have a fence, on that line. A way of formalizing that for this unique condition. So.
But there's nothing in the motion about what's the size, like, can they plant trees or what?
There's nothing in the motions to do with any of that right now. Councilmember Smith brought up something that hadn't been discussed as far as changing any of the vegetative restrictions.
I just want to give an example. At my home down in Pheasant Hollow, I have the Jordanelle Aqueduct and the Alpine Aqueduct of the Central Utah Project run along the south side and in my property. And so the easement specifies that I'm not supposed to plant trees on top of that.
Right.
So this is different. You don't have big pipes there, but it just seems, like we ought to probably have some sort of.
Well, there is one part of the proposed easement that does, in the access corridor that's on the west side of the channel, it does say no trees in that there. The slope area that you asked about is the area that we hadn't really contemplated, but, trees on that, we still need the ability to get into the channel, et cetera, so I think planting additional trees there might be problematic. I don't know that we couldn't handle a tree or two here or there.
Right.
But the whole thing filled with tree would be a problem. Yeah.
Well, it'd be a problem to water them all too, but I just wondered if you had stipulations.
And we don't have anything in the documents right now on the quote-unquote slope area, if you will, or the area between the trail and the channel.
Are there other council that have questions? If it's okay, Andy, I'd like to, since we probably have some public here, I'd like to hear if there's any of them that have questions, or maybe if they help with things or on that. So I'd like to open it up. If there's any public here that'd like to address the specific topic here on the Broadleaf channel, that they're welcome to come forward.
I'm Jonathan Myers, 308. I just simply say this is a great resolution. Andy's communicated, extensively throughout the process, has, I think, fielded more questions than you could have imagined. But I think, he inherited something that goes back 16 years when it was originally developed, and having lived there the entire time, this is kind of one of the final issues. Originally it was the trail, now it's been this. And so we just appreciate the extensive work that's been done. that this does address all the known issues that we've dealt with, whether it's liability in its current state or maintenance and all of those other things. And so we just appreciate the council and the city's support of this and hope that this is acceptable, because it does bring a lot of closure for all the residents that are affected by this. So,
Thank you.
So, Mayor, can I ask him a question? So what is your understanding on the liability? Will it be the cities? Is that what you understand?
yes.
Okay, as
I mean-
discussed earlier.
Because I mean, just from, and I've separately visited with, an attorney who's been helpful in bringing a lot of this together, but the bottom line is none of us would choose, to maintain the ditch the way, in either form, on our own property. Yes, we bought, yes, we inherited that, and I was okay with it, but we also acknowledge that the city's the one that keeps it there, that maintains it, and is the one that puts water into it in one way or another. So if it was a swimming pool, right, the city requires me to fence my yard in order to have a swimming pool there. So I'm the one, creating the hazard, where this is the city's responsibility.
So what interest, if you noticed in your neighbors, and I think some of them are here tonight, but to fence along the west side of the trail?
A little bit, but again, you've been out there.
Uh-huh. It's up and down and
the
all around.
grade from my backyard to where this is going to be is about a 25-foot drop.
Right.
And in most cases, unlandscaped or over a retaining wall. So for most people, the way they're going to seed this and let it grow is going to be, it's the way it's been for 15 years, and I
Leave it open.
haven't heard many people be that interested in trying to do much outside of within the access road or the new easement. That we'll just be happy to have that cleaned up. So,
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address?
Tanya College. We're in 310, so we're at the north end of I'm sorry, it's always going to be a ditch, but I hope it's going to be a pretty ditch soon, really, truly. I understand we have some beautiful granite coming, Andy has said, from that hopefully really is going to make it beautiful. My concerns are still because of our property, and it's not even the ditch specifically, it's the pipe. We have numerous pictures we've sent to City Council, and unfortunately, this issue predates all of you, except I think when you were on the City Council the first time, it was still here.
Right.
But otherwise, even the city staff, except maybe Nathan, I don't know when Nathan started, but for everybody else, it predates by many, many years, what we've been dealing with. And again, as Jonathan said, we did inherit the problem. I have suggestions if this ever comes up again on future property, if you want to ask me later. But my concern is still, in speaking with legal advocates as well, the concern Andy has mentioned is that, number one, they're going to be tight to get it back in the easement on our property and then to continue to adjust it south onto the neighbors' properties. And I'm all for them doing that and having everything that they would like and being able to move forward with projects, and really everybody is excited about that piece. I think anybody that's ever dealt with legal and other issues knows that that's not going to stop the next person that falls into that ditch from suing me, even if it is in the easement. Now again, it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars to explain that it's not my easement and have lots of letters written and all of that to get out of it, but it's still going to be an expense to me, even though they technically shouldn't sue me because it's not on, it's in the easement. And my concern is they're not sure they can get it back within the easement. They're going to get it as close as they can, but they're not sure they're going to get it completely back within the easement on our property, because we are limited by where the pipe comes out of the road onto our property and where it has to go to start the neighboring properties. That I understand is an isolated situation for our property. That is why we've requested the fence. Moving forward, our net gain is about that. And the truth is, if I put a fence in, it's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars to put that fence in. I want to do it for my own protection. And the truth is, it's going to provide some protection to the city. I can't stop a kid that wants to climb a fence or come through the ditch north and decide they want to play in that pipe. But I feel like at that point, I will have done everything in my power to try and protect the children that I've had literal nightmares about having an accident in that ditch. We barely stopped a few of them from having major, major issues. And I know I've said it before, so I don't want to be just redundant. But that's my biggest concern. We're willing to agree to the fence requirement. We're willing to agree to make sure that there's a gate in there. Andy and I did talk about planting trees down there. But again, like it would be a couple of trees. It's very sporadic. There would never be anything that would interfere. But that's about it. It really is kind of an orphan piece of property for us because the way our property is laid out, the piece we're talking about is in between the two easements. So it is technically our property, and if it weren't for this unique circumstance, we'd just come in and get a fence permit and put it up. But because of the unique circumstance of the property, we're having to go through a lot more work than frankly should be necessary to make this happen, especially since we are willing to do it at our own expense. That's my biggest concern. Aside from the water, I always like to point out that the same engineers that engineered this plan are the same ones who engineered the water flowing to us in the first place. And I don't know, but that's just bad planning in my opinion. But that being said, I've said it 100 times, I still feel like for us and for our neighbors, it really is the most reasonable plan going forward. I did tell Brittany in my email last night, and I apologized, I was responding to her at midnight. It's water. We don't control water. We're going to try to control water, and we're going to do our best. But we don't control water, and so I'm hoping and praying that it really will stay within where it's going. But obviously it has created its own path already. It will likely do that in the future, and that's my worry. But I believe today this is the place that we can go forward, and I really am happy for all my neighbors who are gaining property and moving forward with exciting things. I think that's wonderful. But for safety issues, that's why we are concerned about the fence. We understand the slope. It will be down on, as close as we can get it to the trail easement. That would be our plan. I don't know about anyone else, because the truth is if they can get it as close to the trail as possible, they may have no desire to mess with anything on that side of it, and that's great for them. Some of the other concerns that I just mentioned to Brittany that the person who gets the contract is going to have to worry about is the fact that on my property alone, with really bad math, I'm looking at 50 or 60,000 cubic feet of dirt that has to be moved to fill in the ditch. You're not going to get that from digging a new ditch, because you're only digging a new ditch a few feet deep. So that's my worry, is there is going to be a lot of dirt to be moved. I actually did suggest in the peanut gallery back there, mind the tailings. I don't really want them on my property, but we're going to have a lot of space to fill in. Now, right down on the Patterson property, they've been giving away free dirt, so I highly encourage the city to take advantage of whatever's left there, because it won't just be my property. Obviously, the property slopes down all the way to the end of those lots. And those are just logistical things that are going to face the budget if it turns out they have to start hauling in truck and truck and truck after truck of dirt. Ultimately, once you guys approve it, that'll be theirs to work out. But again, I hate that it already has been another couple of years and it's going to cost us another $100,000 to move forward. It kills me. It kills me that we're having to spend that much money to fix it. But
It kills me too.
Brittany, did you have a question for me earlier? Okay. Did we understand that we're talking about the part above the pipe, not the part below the pipe? Okay. That part has created a problem, and we've actually already had our brand new neighbor who resides behind us, in between us and the church and the school, fall into a hole. A very nice elderly lady. I didn't feel like it was a kind welcome to the neighborhood, because she was trying to go back to her property that way. And because of all that's happened there, we ended up with some big old holes. Luckily, her husband's the son-in-law's a doctor, and they didn't sue us. We're so happy. But those are things that we worry about, because that water has run over the road and under our fence and eroded it up above. And I'm sure it'll be addressed, but the truth is, I've been at this 10 years. I don't know always that I'm heard, and that's okay. That's just life. I know that the contractor, when they show up on my property, isn't getting direction from me, and that's why I just want to make sure those things are addressed, because I don't want to have to go out there and try, or at my own expense, fix those issues.
Thank you, Tanya. Is there anyone else who'd like to address anything? If there's not, we'll go ahead, we'll move it back to the council. Is there any other discussion from the council? If
I have
not,
a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, that was a good point, that we can't control water. So is there any type of estimate as to the viability of this project in the future? Does the contractor project, or the engineering firm project that it will last 10 years or 5 years, or they just won't absolutely assign a number to that?
Well, the engineer was given the value by the city of 250 cubic feet per second. That's what he had to design the channel to withstand. And so the engineer is putting his stamp on the plans for the construction plans, saying, you know, I'm certifying to the city that this channel will work up to that value. Now,
For what period of time?
well, the statute of repose or limitations in the state's 9 years, right? I mean, am I right, Rob? Last I remember was 9 years.
The statute for an engineer to be held liable towards their engineering, is that what the?
I think it's 9 years in the state. That's just by state law, I think. But Rob.
Is Rob not? I'm sorry, Rob, I don't speak mask. What were you saying?
So in theory, to answer your question, in theory, this should be designed to stay in place for as long as flows are less than that design flow for forever, right? But how long can you hold the engineer responsible for that if it moves? That's going to be the statute of limitations, which my memory is it's 9 years, but that's why we have Rob, because he'll probably tell me it's different.
I'm sure he's looking that up. So.
So.
Do you have other questions, Tim?
No.
We have no other questions, are we prepared for a motion?
I'll make a motion. So I move that the City Council approve the contract with SNL and authorizes a contract amount up to $278,300 for the reconstruction of the Broadleaf Hollow Channel. Release the contract shall be subject, release of the contract shall is subject.
Yeah.
To receipt of signed easement documents for lots 302 through 309 for the new channel location.
I'll second.
Motion made by Scott, seconded by Kim. Any other discussion? If not, we're ready for a vote. That's a 5-0. Our next item is, I believe, on the same topic.
I think we pretty much discussed it as well.
Is there any new information that needs to come out, Andy, on this is action number 8, vacation and release of the easement for the Broadleaf Hollow Channel.
Yeah, and just the only thing I'd point out is where we're talking about allowing the fence is where it's shown with the red line on the screen. So we're saying that they could put a fence as close to the trail as the red line. I would point out that in the motion that you see on the screen, one thing we got really worried about making sure that it was clear about the fences and forgot to include the subject to provision of receipt of the new easements. So the vacation of the old easement would be subject to receipt of the new easements.
So does that need to be, what you're saying?
It needs to be added at the end of this.
Whoever makes the motion, we need to add receipt of the new.
Subject to receipt of the new
Subject to the
easements.
receipt of the new easement.
Yeah, I apologize about that. It was clear, even in the little summary on the agenda, it says that the easement would be contingent upon receipt of the new easements, and that just slipped through on the proposed motion. So.
Any discussion on this item? Rob?
It's 6 years, and, yes.
It's 6 years that you hold an engineer, you can hold the engineer to his engineer's standards.
Yes, or 2 years in certain circumstances if you have a longer term from when you discover it, but 6 years. The other thing is I just noticed this does not address Tanya's property, which is 310, correct? So if you could with this, we will.
Well, the last motion did not include 310. I know it's last motion.
Because we did.
That was the approval of the contract, the bid.
Right.
Yeah.
This is
It's
the
just the
approval of the
contract.
easements as well as the fence matter.
Yeah.
Um, I would recommend, in addition to the additional addition that Andy added on, and that Lot 310 also be allowed to build a fence as well, on similar terms. That way, her property is covered as well, because this only includes the lower ones.
So as we're looking at number 309, or 310, is it only dealing with the fence, or is it the same wording? Do we just replace 302 through 310, or is it?
Hers is separate because we're not releasing the easement on her property.
That's why I was asking for.
What we discussed with Tanya is, and Joshua, is that they are going to sign for the city basically a right of entry to let us get onto the areas outside of the easement and fix it all up. And so we did discuss maybe we could put the fence provision
that
in
in
there.
there. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure Tanya was.
So
right of entry.
on the motion, do we include 310 with the fence easement, with that they provide, that they have to also comply with them,
I
with the
think maybe
fence?
if I could give you a little bit of suggested wording, maybe we could say at the end of the suggested motion, we could say, subject to the receipt of the new easements for lots 302 through 309, and also clarifying that lot 310 will be able to have a fence commensurate with the other properties in that row. Would that be sufficient, Rob? What do you think of that? It would certainly express the intent that everyone along the channel could have a fence if they so chose.
Any questions or?
I apologize about
I'm
the
sorry,
motions
can't
on
be
the
so big.
run. We do our best to think through all the offends and therefores, and then we learned that we should have thought a few more. So
Why don't we have someone try the motion? If some others will watch it, we can make an amendment if we need to, or help the person making the motion. Is there
We should
someone
let
daring to
Sarah
make-
take that one.
Yes, Sarah, this is your
Sarah,
moment to
you're gonna go
shine.
for it? Okay, here we go.
Okay,
We're
I
sorry.
make a motion, I move that the city council approve and authorize the mayor to sign the vacation and release of easement as recorded on the Dry Creek Highlands Phase 3 plat for lots 302 through 309. Instructs staff to add an allowance in the new easement documents approved on September 21, 2021, that allows an open or semi-open fence to be placed at the edge of the trail easement between the channel and the trail, and implements the other conditions for fencing discussed in the staff report.
And then,
And then, subject to the release of the old easement, the receipt of the new easement, and will include lot 310 to have the ability to put up a fence commensurate with the other fencing that we have talked about.
Okay, I'm going to clap for her. That is great.
That's
For
great.
first council meeting, Sarah, awesome. That was awesome.
it's her first epistle.
I know, yeah, but that's a good motion. Anyway, do we have a second on that emotion on Sarah's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have, Sarah has made the motion and Scott is second. Is there any other discussion? Are we ready for vote? Let's go to the vote. That passes 5-0. Moving on to the next item, which is action item number 9. It is agreement between Patterson Construction, Lehigh Irrigation, and Highland City. And are you doing that one, Andy?
I am doing that one. So Mayor and Council, you'll recall, last meeting, we approved the drilling of the new well number 4. And for those of you who are interested, it's a side note, but we're at 115 feet deep as of this evening in the new well. But as part of that new well, when we operate a well, we always have the need to what's called pump to waste. And so, as we drill this new well, we're going to have to pump a bunch of water to kind of do what they call develop the well or get the well ready to flow. And then every time we turn on a well, we run it to waste for a certain time, just to make sure that the water is clear, et cetera, before we turn it into the system. And so we need a place to waste that water to. Currently, the water wastes all the way along 11200 North, all the way over to the Patterson property, which is the Longhorn property. So a lot of people know that it's the Longhorn property, where you see Longhorn cattle. So on your screen, or what you see on the TV, the brown ditch is the ditch that we flow it in from well 4 all the way to the Patterson property. Recently, the city approved a subdivision. It was the Sunrise Estates subdivision on the Patterson property. And to date, historically, if you look back, the water would hit that property and would either flow to the north or to the south, and many years ago it could have made it down to Dry Creek to do what they call tailwater, or that's, when you have water that just stays in the ditch. Tailwater is tailwater into Dry Creek. That no longer happens through the course of a number of years. What's happened is the property, it's just gone down to the Patterson property. It's just kind of fanned out onto the property and infiltrated in. As that property develops, that will obviously change, or may change, the ability to do that. And so Lehigh Irrigation took the lead in negotiating this issue with the Pattersons. But what has been arrived on is that the Pattersons, for the intervening time, when they just do these first 10 lots, the little yellow ditch that you see on the map that kind of curves to the south, that will be built just to still allow the water to just kind of go out onto the undeveloped portion of the property. When they develop, assuming that the plan stays as is, the ability to do that will go away because they'll have homes there. And so the Pattersons will pay the green portion of the ditch that you see that goes north. They'll pay for the property, for the ditch to be piped along their property. And then Lehigh Irrigation and Highland City would split 50-50 the cost of the purple ditch on the map. And that would be the rest, that would be taking it down the hill on 6,000 to Dry Creek. And then that would give us the ability to tail water out to Dry Creek forever, and the water could flow to Dry Creek. And so it's, this took some negotiation to kind of work out, and we feel it's fair. It's an unknown future because Patterson's could develop the rest of it in 2 years, or they might wait 30 years. So we really don't know when that would come. If we were to go out and do it today, we'd anticipate the Highland City portion would be $150,000. And obviously in the future, if it's 10 years in the future, that cost is going to be more because of the inflation. But we feel it's a fair resolution. Pattersons are doing their part, and the Lehigh Irrigation is doing their part, and we feel that we do have a part in it because we can't have this ditch go away. Lehigh Irrigation might get to the point where they're like, oh, we don't need this ditch anymore, it can just go away. We can't have it go away forever, so under that auspices, I think we're getting a bargain because Lehigh Irrigation is willing to pay half the cost.
And I just, when you're asking on the cost, so Lehigh Irrigation is paying the red portion.
When you say red,
Oh, I'm sorry, the long portion.
The long portion, that's just going to remain as it is. That's just
Okay,
the ditch
that's
as it is.
existing.
And that's an open ditch?
It's piped in some areas, open others.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like most ditches.
And then
kind
you're
of a
saying, who's
hodgepodge.
paying the yellow portion?
Pattersons are paying the yellow portion right now to develop.
Okay.
So when you were bringing up comments,
Okay, and I'm sorry, and then the green is a future.
Green, Patterson will pay for the green portion in the future at their cost.
So 100% yellow.
100% Patterson and the
And
green.
100%. Then as we get to the purple.
Purple.
That shared 50.
That's 50-50 share between us and Lehigh.
Okay, so-
Lehigh, not Lehigh City, Lehigh Irrigation.
So let's assume it's 100,000. Lehigh Irrigation would pay 50,000, Highland City pays 50,000.
Right,
Okay.
correct. But what we would anticipate the cost today, if we were to go do it today, Lehigh would pay 150 and we would pay 150 today. That would be our cost estimate today.
So the reason they would be willing to do that is that water then goes into Dry Creek, which goes into their new reservoir for their pressurized irrigation, right? I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, a
Lehigh-
direct thing.
This is Lehigh Irrigation, the reservoir's Lehigh City.
Uh-huh.
I mean, but it's kind of, the cities and the irrigation companies were kind of all,
But the new reservoir is for Lehigh Irrigation, or the city, right?
it's for Lehigh City.
Lehigh City. So
yeah.
it's different than the irrigation.
It's different entity, yeah. I mean, like I said, the irrigation companies and the cities are closely partnered up these days because the cities own good share of the irrigation companies these days. They don't own them totally, but, you know, a number of the shares between the Highland and Lehigh, you know, we own a number of the shares in the company.
So why would they want to do this? What's the advantage for them? I don't understand.
That's why I think we're getting a bargain, because
Okay.
they're agreeing to chip in some money, and it may be in the future that they don't need this ditch anymore. But per this agreement, they'd still be bound to chip in the money. It's us that needs it to last forever.
Right.
As far as I know. I don't, you know, there's a conceivable scenario where Lehigh Irrigation wouldn't need it.
But it still seems like we're putting water eventually into Dry Creek, which eventually goes into their pressurized irrigation reservoir.
Yeah, but the water that we would put in there.
But that's not the thought.
The water we put in there, it'll never see it enough to do them any good. You know, the water we put in this will be infrequent, and with the creek bed and everything on Dry Creek, I don't think Lehigh will ever actually receive any water out of it, what we would receive. We just need to know that we're putting it in a safe place, you know, a place where if it did flow for whatever reason, it can handle it. But yeah, I think we're getting a good deal out of it.
So Andy?
Yes.
So there's going to be water in a ditch along that road where there are some additional homes. Will that impact the residents that live along there? Any chance of flooding or problems for them where there hasn't been water before?
No, there is water right now.
There is?
There's
Okay.
water today. The ditch exists today. Lehigh Irrigation Company does put water in there today. We put water in there today.
In the purple and the green?
In the brown. The purple
Oh,
and
right,
green
I meant the
don't
purple
exist
and the
today.
green. That's where I'm talking about, the purple and the
Purple and the
green.
green will be a pipe. In
Oh,
the
it'll be
future,
a
it'll
pipe.
be in the
Okay.
road in a pipe.
So nobody will even notice it?
No, yeah, it'll be under the asphalt, you know, at that point.
Got it, thanks.
But yeah, this is all about, you know, kind of what do we do when the Longhorn property develops totally? And we can't any longer turn that out, you know, because it's, and I don't know if tailwaters make sense, but right now it just tailwaters out onto the property and just kind of spreads out, infiltrates, and, you know, it doesn't cause any harm. But as soon as that's filled with homes or, you know, then that all changes. So this is kind of the long-term plan. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but
Anything else, council?
I will clarify one thing for you. Wayne Patterson signed the Lehigh agreement. Lehigh prepared the agreement. Wayne got it, signed it, brought it down to us, and so the motion does suggest that it be clarified that the cost sharing is 50-50. We've talked to the irrigation company. That was the intent of the agreement, but we'll just pen it in and just.
Say that one more time. What is it we're pinning in?
The clarifying that the cost share is 50-50.
Between Lehigh Irrigation and Highland City.
Highland City.
Now,
That's in the motion.
Yeah, it's in the motion. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, just normally we would have the agreement all cleaned up to say that, right? But.
You're saying you're going to pen it in where, because Wayne Patterson's already signed.
Because Wayne's already signed it.
Do we have to have him initial that then?
I don't think so, because it wouldn't
I
affect
think
anything.
legally we need to have
Do
him
we?
initial it.
Okay. Yes, okay. Yes.
That's what I'm going, yes.
That's a good sign. Okay, yes, we'll have Wayne initial that then. Yeah. So, and we've talked to Lehigh after we got the agreement clarified. That's the way we always understood it, but we thought that would be good to make that just formalized, you know, that it's 50-50, so in the future, nobody has to wonder.
I'd like to make a
Sorry.
motion.
There is a proposed motion there, you know. Okay.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I move that City Council approve the agreement with Patterson Development, Lehigh Irrigation Company, and Highland City, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with the provision that the signed agreement clarifies that the Lehigh Irrigation and Highland City cost sharing is equal, with each entity paying 50% of the shared cost.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Kim, seconded by Scott. Any other discussion? If not, let's move to vote. And that passes 5-0. Our next item on the agenda is action item and resolutions. It is council board assignments and resolutions. Is that you, me, who's the?
That'd be you, Mayor.
Okay. As we go through, this is kind of go in review here is the council assignments. We have down as the proposed for the 2022, these board assignments will stay in place until your term ends. The changes would be Mayor Kurt Ostler being assigned to be Mountain Land Association of Governments, known as MAG, also on the MAG Executive Council and MAG Regional Planning Committee. Also assigned to American Fork Canyon Working Group and North Utah County Aquifer Council. That also on the assignments is Brittany Bills would be assigned to Utah Valley Dispatch Special Service District, or Central Utah 911. Sarah Peterson being assigned to the Arts Council, Highland Arts Council. Lone Peak Public Safety Board as an alternate. Utah League of Cities and Towns as a Legislative Policy Committee member. Is there any discussions on any of the board appointments that need to be had? So as we do the motion, is there any questions or anything before we do the motion? If not, then we'd be ready for the motion.
So let me just ask you a quick question. So things will change in a couple years, depending
Correct.
on who runs re-election and all those things. So we actually kind of change board assignments actually every 2 years.
On some of them, yes.
Yeah.
On some, not. Does that answer the question, or is there another question?
No, that's fine.
Mayor, did you want to address
The mayor pro tem? Do we want to do that here, or is this, I guess we,
so with this, but
yeah, because we want to have as the
do
part.
two separate motions, though?
Okay. So also, because there, at this time, we also need to have a mayor pro tem, I would open it up if there's any nominations for the mayor pro tem.
I nominate Brittany Bills.
There's a nomination for Brittany Bills. Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any other nominations for any other candidates for mayor pro tem? If not, so what we will do is we'll do the first motion will be for the assignments, which is the proposed motion, and then we will do a second vote for mayor pro tem. Is that the understanding how we need to do it? So if there's anyone that can make the motion that's here in the thing, and then we'll need to make a motion on mayor pro tem.
I'll make the motion. I move that the City Council ratify Mayor Ostler's council appointments as presented, including the appointment of Mayor Kurt Ostler as a regular member on the Lone Peak Public Safety District Board and the North Utah County Aquifer Council, Brittany P. Bills on the Utah Valley Dispatch Special Service District Board and as a regular member on the Lone Peak Public Safety District Board, and Sarah D. Peterson as an alternate member on the Lone Peak Public Safety District Board.
I'll second it.
Moving and seconded. Do we want to do, we'll do the vote on that, and then we need to come back and do a vote on the mayor pro tem. That's unanimous, 5-0. We will now be voting on Brittany Bills to be mayor pro tem. Do you have a slide for that?
Again, ignore the title. What you're voting for is Brittany being mayor pro tem.
Okay. So before us is the mayor pro tem for Brittany Bills. That passes 5-0. Okay. The next item on our agenda is a discussion on the interlocal agreement with North Utah County on their question center. So I'll handle that one since I'm on that board as an appointment. There are 3 cities. The North Utah County Equestrian Park is owned by the county. The county Utah County put out an RFP, a requisition for a proposal. They were looking for someone to come and take over the maintenance and the management of the North Utah County Equestrian Center. That is due today at 3 p.m. So the RFP was due today at 3 p.m. There was, we know that there was going to be some other interested parties also submitting. the discussion's been had for the past several months that Lehigh City, American Fork City, and Highland City would enter into an interlocal agreement to make a proposal to go down and maintain the North Utah County Equestrian Center. Now, the question is before you, there is no agreement. As we've met as a committee, and I'm talking as we've met with the mayors of Lehigh and the mayor of American Fork, myself and Rod Mann, and then there's been staff there, is we felt like before we went through and did the actual agreement, we need to see if the county's even amenable to having this be managed by the three cities. If it is, then we will come back and do an interlocal agreement that all three councils will need to agree to. In the proposal, we made sure that they are aware that this needs to still be approved by the councils, that we don't have an interlocal agreement, that there would have to be something. Just some rough numbers that are out there is it appears the county is spending about $80,000 per year in maintenance and about $20,000 in a new part-time employee. And we believe that the revenue at this time down at the Equestrian Center is about $17,000 a year, but we recognize that there's several people using it that are either not paying or don't know how to pay. We found out that a lot have tried to pay and they're not sure how to pay. And so there could be other revenue. The other thing is the county is not allowed for any specific special, reservations to be open. And so there's other uses that as the three cities look at that can, generate some revenue to be able to try to help off this. With this being also managed by the three cities, there would be several grants available. Being your hotel or your transportation, some of the different grants out there for your special, there's like a hotel tax or tourism tax out there that's in Utah County that this area would also, probably be there that we'd be able to do for a grant there. We've also mentioned to the county that this $80,000 per year maintenance, we'd like to have them still contribute that as a capital account to be able to help improve the Equestrian Center. And so before you, we do not have a management agreement that will come back if the county is favorable for the three cities to manage. Is there questions? Is there, Aaron, you've been attending those meetings with me. I've been going, so I'm on as an assignment, I'm on a special board down there down at Utah County that we've kind of been talking about how to come to this RFP. But now that that's happening, that the three cities are doing it, I'm sure they won't have some board members down there. But then there's been this separate meeting where the three cities have been meeting to put this RFP together. Is there any input you'd like to give?
I'd say the only other thing is the whole point, the reason that the cities were wanting to pursue this idea is there was word that at least one organization who was putting in a bid on to manage the park was either some sort of a nonprofit or a business who, it would say an equestrian park, but it would be a much more private venture for their clientele. And so the bid that the cities put together or not a bid, I should say, the draft proposal the cities put together is really to keep it open as an open facility for public use. There might be times where we would rent out the facility for private use, but it would largely be public use.
So does that make sense? So if it goes to a nonprofit, they could close it off on certain days for no use. What's being proposed for the Tri-Cities is to keep certain riding days open, still keep it the use that it is now open to the public. That's really, now Lehigh City would get a benefit by, they are also putting a water tank on this property. That was part of the interlocal agreement, is for, that they'd like to have a water tank. The benefit for us is we'd also be able to do some trail connections down into this area. Currently, this property actually resides in Highland City. We provide water to it. I think we found out, did we find out that the sewer is going direct to TSSD? Is that what we found out today? I think the sewer is going direct to TSSD, but we mentioned to the other cities as Highland City that our budgets are a little different than maybe what their budget might look at. So we might need to donate some type of service in kind or some things that way to try to help compensate.
So can we ask some questions?
Yeah, great.
So you're basically saying the county is donating $80,000 a year.
That's what we're hoping.
And then, well, we hope so, but that's what they're paying now,
Right.
basically, plus $17,000 for a
Well,
part-time employee.
But yeah, about 20,000, that's brand new where they just added a part-time employee.
Okay.
The
so-
20,000 is just my estimate for what a normal parks type
Sure.
employee would cost there.
So there's costs of about 100,000, and the revenue is less than,
17.
is 17. But I think if it's better managed, you could probably increase the revenue, for example, if people actually had to pay to use it,
Right.
if there was some sort of fee. So the three cities would then split the cost. So if the county comes up with 80,000,
Well,
would the
that-
three cities be splitting just the 20?
No, so let's assume that let's do the assumption that it's,
Yeah.
that maintain it's 100,000.
I'd like to know what the cost will be.
So let's assume that it's 100,000 with that part-time employee that may not maintain all this. Then you would then have the revenue if you start renting it out for different events or things that
Sure.
way. But so let's assume we're able to generate 40, so you're 60,000 short. The cities would have to enter into some interlocal agreement how that would be covered. The 80,000 would go to capital improvements to improve the
Oh,
property.
so that would be in addition to the 100,000?
Yeah.
So the cities, depending on what revenue is generated, they would have to come up with the deficit between that and 100,000.
And then there would be grants that are available out there. Some grants would only go to help with capital costs, some will help with maintenance costs.
And I anticipate the three cities would split those costs equally.
That was a question. We didn't know if it was going to be, how that will be done. That will still need it. If the county is amenable to our proposal, that has to be worked out if it's based off population or if it's just a third. That has not been worked out.
So this property is in the Highland City annexation plan, basically?
I believe it is.
That's what I
physically?
understand.
Yeah.
Okay. But, one of the stipulations, one of the reasons Lehigh likes it is because they want to put a water tank. So if this is eventually annexed in Highland as having a water tank, of course, that's kind of what American Fork did with the irrigation pond on the south side of
Well,
Highland.
we have an irrigation tank in Draper,
That's true. That's true.
or a water tank in Draper. But it is a good question. I think when I asked, very transparent, I asked American Fork, I says, we have a lot of equestrian users. If you look in Highland, we have a lot of equestrian users that come down and use this. But, if you look at the population of Highland that have horses, it's very limited. You're very small. But I asked American Fork, I says, so what do you see your residents are going to benefit? And he says they all want to keep it as open space. They don't, the proposal that the county was looking at was building all apartments here. That was kind of what they were thinking.
Yeah.
And so I think, if you lose the green area here, American Fork has a park next to it. So I think they see some synergy there by having another park. And Lehigh would have that irrigation. We would have,
No, that pond down there is Lehigh irrigation.
that's Lehigh irrigation.
Yeah.
But that park there, that's American Fork Park. When you talk, all three cities come right together at this spot. And so, but that's something that we wanted to let you be aware of, that if it is that will be coming in.
Mayor, that doesn't include any of the cost of like a staff member to take reservations and collect the yearly fee or whatever.
Correct.
So it's more than that.
It could be more than that. Some of it might be if it's all software based. Does that make sense? Hopefully you can get it. But yeah, the problem is this could be like a rec center. And so there's some costs that we might not be recouping all the way. And so that's something as a city, we have to kind of decide if we want what our participation is.
Do the residents that use this believe that the maintenance right now is sufficient, or are they hoping that if the cities do this agreement, that there'll be maybe more money put into it to kind of make it a little bit better?
They are hoping, you have a footing, I guess, that all the horses ride on. They're hoping that that's maintained a little bit better. They're hoping that they're getting new footing. Now, the other concern is there's been some that have wanted to donate to this specific equestrian center, but they didn't know how to donate because it goes directly to the county. The county doesn't have a way to donate. And so that's something that I brought up about maybe we could use something with the Highland Foundation in a way that someone could donate here. But yeah, there is, by the way, the proposal is that they have to the county would need to keep all the equipment, including the tractor and some other things that are there for whoever takes, if we took it over as three cities, the equipment needs to stay.
I like that this is a way to keep this as an open space, that our Highland residents use it. I think my only concern is, what is it going to cost us, Highland City? Because we don't have the budgets that Lehigh and American Fork do. We don't have that revenue stream that they do, per se. And so that's my only concern on that end is, what is this going to cost us?
Yeah.
Amen. I agree with that.
I agree totally with Councilwoman Rodela. I like to keep it open space. It seems to me that you're not presenting a lot of costs at this point.
We're not, but like you said, we don't know. There has to be a whole proposal, I think, put together.
Right.
The other, it might be as a city, we mentioned that, hey, we can have our park staff go down and mow. Maybe our donation is a different way than financially. Maybe now it still costs you money to go down and do that, but there might be, hey, we have the water, maybe we provide the water to that area. There's some offsets that we might be able to have in there. But that will be something we're gonna have to feather out. Is not known, and we've not entered into an agreement yet. Does that make sense? There's no agreement. It still has to come back to the council, but it is, all of your concerns, I think, are very valid. Any other input that others would like to have on it? Okay. We will let you know where the county kind of goes with the question center. Like I said, it was due today. The next item is item number 12 is mayor, council, and staff communication items. Is there any items that the staff would like to communicate with the council? There is none. Is there any items that need to come up from council members that need to be just brought up as a discussion item or as a communication item to the rest of the council?
Just one little item. On my reappointment to the North Point Waste Management Service, when we looked at that, I'm going to have to reapply as a member at large. The reason for that is when the Special Service District was created down there, Highland, Vineyard, and Cedar Hills came on board afterwards. And so the three cities, where they appoint whoever Highland wants to be on it, basically. But we have to reapply. So I'll contact them and see how we have to do that, because I had to do that before. They looked at it, so I just be aware of that, because I'm a member kind of at large. It really isn't a city appointment, but somebody needs to be on the garbage dump board.
And thank you for doing that, Scott.
Oh, yes.
Is there any other items that as a discussion needs to come up? Chief Patton.
You gotta
Can you
walk
come
up to the mic. Can you turn on your mic, Chief?
Okay, you want me to say it all again? Is the meeting in the morning at 7 or 7:30?
7:30 is what was posted publicly.
7:30? So we ought to let Alpine know, because they said in their meeting it was at 7, that it had changed for tomorrow's meeting.
We thought it was until we got here tonight, and we recognized the public posting was 7:30.
Okay. So.
Is that?
We just may want to let somebody know up there, I don't know.
Do you want?
Or they're just going to be early. I mean, they're not going to be late, so they'll be good.
Maybe they'll be on time one time. No.
Yeah, but I'd be mad if I showed up at 7 a.m. and noticed it was 7:30, so.
All right.
Okay. If we don't have anything else, we have down here some of the items that the staff is working on. Is there any updates that council would like to have on any of these items that the staff is working on? Seeing none, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to note, this is now 9:16 when you're done.
Has this happened
I
in the
don't-
last 4 years?
I have no words. What just happened tonight?